Hey, this is someone from my team. I'm currently in South Africa on a research expedition and boy, does it feel good to be back in the field. Today we're going to talk about skin color, specifically why humans come in so many different colors. We are going to talk about the spectrum of human skin color and where we fall on that spectrum. And we are also going to talk about how skin color can tell us something about where our ancestors are from. That's coming up right now. Human skin comes in a whole bunch of colors from very dark almost black to very light almost white. So what's going on there? What causes the different colors? There is actually only one gene that is primarily responsible for skin color, and that gene makes an enzyme called tyrosinase. Tyrosinase takes the amino acid tyrosine and converts it into melanin. So what is melanin? Melanin is a pigment that's produced by our skin cells called melanocytes, which hang out in the bottom layer of our epidermis, which is the top layer of our skin. When melanin is produced, it gets packaged into little sacs called melanosomes. Then those melanosomes get transported up to the top layer of our epidermis where they get released and they create little packets of pigment. And that's what gives our skin its color. The more pigment, the darker the skin. So what controls how much melanin we make? Well, that's controlled by that one gene that I mentioned earlier. And that gene comes in many different versions, or as we gene people say, it has a lot of allelic diversity. All of these different versions of the gene produce slightly different versions of tyrosinase, and that affects how much melanin your body produces. This means that skin color is an example of what we call continuous variation. There's not just 2 or 3 or 4 different colors. Really, there's an infinite number of colors that humans can have. And that's because the amount of melanin you produce can vary a lot. You can produce no melanin at all, or you can produce tons of it. In fact, the range of possible skin colors among humans is so continuous that it doesn't even make sense to categorize them into different races. There is no biological basis for race. So what about the different versions of the gene that make different skin colors? Where did they come from? They come from mutations. Over time, different versions of the gene arose in different populations. And if you look at the different versions of the gene across different populations, you can see that most of them fall along a continuum from very dark skin to very light skin. But there's also some populations like the Kung and the Mabuti pygmies that have very dark skin, but their versions of the gene don't fall at the very dark end of the spectrum. They actually have versions of the gene that are found in light-skinned people. So even though they have dark skin, those versions of the gene are recessive, so they got expressed, so they're not contributing to the production of melanin. So even though they have dark skin, their melanin is kind of muted because they have all these other copies of the gene that are producing no melanin. So if you look at the spectrum of skin color, and you look at the spectrum of the different versions of the melanin gene across different populations, it's pretty clear that the gene alone can't explain skin color. There's something else going on. And what that is natural selection. Natural selection has acted on skin color because skin color affects how well you can get vitamin D from the sun. You see, when your skin is exposed to sunlight, it synthesizes vitamin D. But if you have really dark skin, then it takes a long time for that vitamin D to be synthesized. So if you live in a place where the sun isn't very strong, then you might not get enough vitamin D. And there's all sorts of problems associated with that. So in populations that live far away from the equator, where the sun isn't very strong, natural selection has favored lighter skin so that more vitamin D could be produced. But then as you get closer and closer to the equator, the sun gets stronger and stronger. And so too much vitamin D can actually be very harmful. And so in places closer to the equator, darker skin has been favored because that protects against getting too much vitamin D. When we made the melanin gene, we were able to recreate a lot of the history of human migration and population structure by looking at the different versions of the gene and where they are found in different populations. For example, we found that the Koko and the Koko have very similar versions of the melanin gene, which tells us that they're related, and the fact that they have light skin tells us that their ancestors migrated out of Africa and into Europe. So to recap, there is really only one gene that is responsible for skin color, and it comes in lots of different versions that make different amounts of melanin. Different versions of the gene are found in different populations, and those different versions arose through mutation. But those different versions of the gene alone can't explain the spectrum of human skin color. To explain the spectrum of skin color, we also need to consider natural selection. And that's because skin color affects how much vitamin D you can get from the sun, and that's affected by where you live. So the further you are from the equator, the more northern or southern latitude, the lighter your skin should be because you need more vitamin D. So thanks for watching. I hope you learned something. If you want to learn more about genetics, you can keep watching this channel. And if you want to watch this whole series in Spanish, you can check out the other channel. Thanks for watching.